Hey everyone, please support what I do to help keep Greyhawk alive by subscribing to the channel. Also, please consider becoming a channel member to get early access to videos, exclusive live chats, quarterly adventure modules, and more. Thanks, and enjoy the show. So I realize that it's been a while since I've done my read-through of the Guide to the World of Greyhawk, so that's just what we're going to do today on Greyhawk Grognard. When last we left my exhaustive read-through of the Guide to the World of Greyhawk, we had just finished up Ekbir, and that brings us to the Frost Barbarians. The Frost Barbarians are up in the upper corner of the map that you can see behind me, to which I am pointing even as we speak. The Frost Barbarians are the ones that are closest to the rest of the Flyness, and thus they're the ones who have the most contact with civilization, in particular with Ratic. So let's just going through their thing here. There's about 50,000 of them. The Frost Barbarians, in their own tongue, are known as the Kingdom of the Frusti, and all of the barbarian nations up there have their own pseudo-Scandinavian kind of names, which is cute. They have never. They inhabit the Thilronian Peninsula, so that whole arc that you see back there, that is called the Thilronian Peninsula. There we go. I can go backwards. That is the Thilronian Peninsula, and that's where all of the Sul-based barbarians are. The Sul, of course, came from the Sea of Dust on the far other end of the Flyness. Of course, at the time, it was not the Sea of Dust. They came. They were part of the migrations after the Invoked Devastation and the Reign of Colorless Fire. In their own language, that region is called Rizia. And it says that they have never recovered from the Battle of Shamblefield, the last two, and have been under the thumb of the Schnai, the Snow Barbarians, for the last 2 decades. And that's important because one of the things that I love about the barbarians up there is that they sort of mirror the real-world medieval Scandinavian nations. So you have, like in the real world, where the Danes had conquered certain others, and the Swedes had conquered others. You have that same sort of, there's 3 distinct nationalities, but they all seem to have periods where they kind of, one goes over the other, and then the other one gets free again. And right now we're in a period where the Snow Barbarians rule over the Frost Barbarians, but only in name, because and this is important. A recent pact concluded between the Frusti and Ratic, which is the civilized nation here on the map, saw a joint army wreak havoc in the Bone March, and during the next campaigning season, clear the north pass of the barbarians from the hold of Stonefist, which is there. So what's going on is Ratic is helping the Frost Barbarians recreate their army along modern lines. And when we go into the later articles that Gygax wrote for Dragon Magazine, he makes a point of saying that they have a modern army, modern in the sense of the rest of the Flyness, with cavalry and archers and so forth, whereas the rest of the barbarian nations, are basically still all infantry, like Vikings, like you would think of. So, because of that, and because of astute diplomacy, the king of the Frost Barbarians is basically gotten freedom for his people in all but oath, according to the thing. So I like the way they tease that out, and they in just a couple of sentences they give you all this great intrigue and backstory. I love that. So next up we have the Kingdom of Furyondy, and Furyondy is on the map here to the west of the Near Dive. There, it is the major kingdom that of good nations that is proximate to the city of Greyhawk. So I get the impression that this was one of the earlier nations in Gary's campaign, because it is right next to the city. And it plays a big role in the history and in the campaign. It's got one of the larger write-ups in the book. Let's see if you can see that. Let the camera adjust. Yeah. So it's got His Pious Majesty, the King of Furyondy, Belvoir IV. Now, Furyondy also has a big role to play in the Temple of Elemental Evil saga. And, of course, later on in the wars, it's a major player because it is the big force opposing Ayuz. But in terms of the Temple of Elemental Evil, one of the things that has happened in that module is that the Prince of... the Prince of... I think it's the Prince of Furyondy is marrying the Princess of... Valuna, which is to the south, to unite the two kingdoms. It might be the... Yeah, that's right. And the prince has been kidnapped, and nobody knows where he is, and he's hidden under the temple, and yada yada. So the geopolitics of that kind of impacts the module on a low level, which I really like. They give a lot of backstory and history. It used to be part of that Great Kingdom back when the Great Kingdom, spanned the entirety of the Flonesse, pretty much. This was one of their outermost outposts, and eventually it declared its independence and so forth. So Furyondy remains one of the large, good aligned nations that stands against the rising evil, which we see in Ayuz and the Horn Society and places like that. So it's an important segment geopolitically in the Flonesse. We don't really get a lot of flavor. I mean, we get a lot of backstory and history, but it's pretty generic as it's presented here. It's just one of those good realms. Belvoir IV is a most noble and just king, and his realm is closely allied with that of Valuna, as we mentioned, constantly warring upon the Horn Society and Ayuz, and lending contingents to the Shield lands against the Bandit Kingdoms. Okay. Furyondy fleet. Yeah. So there's like I say, there's no real. You don't get a sense like you do with some of the evil kingdoms, and I guess that's because it's harder to distinguish a good kingdom than it is an evil kingdom, because the evil kingdoms like Ayuz, it's easy. He's a demigod Cambion, so it's easy to kind of pin that on him. You do get a little bit of it when we talk about like the Pale, which is here, because they're a theocracy and so forth. But it's one of 3 or 4 generic good kingdoms, and that's pretty much all you need to know about it. Obviously, later on, it gets much more elaborated upon when we have the Marklands and so forth, but that was after the wars. Next up, we have the Grand Duchy of Geoff, which is unfortunately not on the map behind me. It is off to the side here, nestled up against the mountains. This is one of those realms that is named after somebody that Gygax knew. In this case, I believe it's a reference to Geoff Perrin. Where this is one of the kingdoms that is beset by giants, because in the western part of the Flonesse, that seems to be the theme, is that giants are pouring out of the mountains. In the original hill giant module and so forth, they were located a little more south, but as things move on and they keep recycling the giants modules, they kind of shift them a little northward, and then eventually Geoff gets overrun by giants and Lolth and so forth. So it's there's not a lot of there early on. It's most of that Sheldamar Valley area is kind of loosely treated, but it does become very important later on, and it's actually the basis of one of the modules. Yeah. So I don't know where I was going. And next up, we have the Gran March, which is also not on this. The Gran March is actually one of the more important realms, because it, along with Basel, are kind of like the plug that keeps the Baklunish lands in line. It's just south of Basel. And it's kind of like the opening into the Sheldamar Valley. But you have the Gran March and then Basel and then Ket, and then that's the Baklunish lands. So you get this idea of there's like this bulwark against the lurking hordes from the west, which is kind of a neat thing. The thing that makes the Gran March stand out, though, is that it is a militaristic land. It is basically owned by a knightly order, and everything is organized along those military lines. So, for example, the state is, the army of the commandant relies primarily on its mailed cavalry, medium horse. So it's doesn't even have a king. Its leader is literally the commandant of the army. So that's something you don't see a lot of in the good aligned lands. So there we go. We were steadily making our way through the guide. Hope you're enjoying these as much as I am. It's nice to tease into the details sometimes. Let me know what you think in the comments, and hope you're all having a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.